finding, had to find the record button. Okay,
I'll be right back.
okay.
So you lost your other half.
She went to find her phone. She put it down.
Oh.
I don't know why she needs it, but whatever. So we over the last several weeks we've been studying through the Gospel of John, and I want to review where we've been very briefly, quickly, and get right into it. John, of course, the theme of John is that Jesus is God. That's his theme. And in chapter 1, he introduced us to who Jesus was. And he also introduced John the Baptist. And if you recall in chapter 1, John the Baptist was the first person in the Bible and in Jesus' life to call Jesus the Lamb of God. It's also interesting in John's writing in Revelation is where the last place it says in the Bible that Jesus is the Lamb of God. Bookends. And also in the first chapter, Jesus began to gather his disciples about him as men were drawn to him. Chapter 2 recorded the wedding at Cana, where Jesus performed his first miracle of turning water into wine. It's the first, we think it's his first miracle. And after doing that, he went into Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover for the first time during his public ministry. And as you recall, that's when he cleansed the temple for the first time and displayed his deity by exerting his godly power to clear the temple all by himself. Chapter 3 began with Nicodemus and ended with John the Baptist. And chapter 4 was the Samaritan woman and closed with the healing of the official's son. Today we're going to begin the next section of John. And in John chapters 5 through 10, we're going to start on chapter 5. There are miracles at the beginning of the story, followed by fairly long discourses that Jesus had with the Jewish leaders and the Jews of his day. And this section of John continues on the theme of proving Jesus was God. It also continues on the theme that Jesus was rejected by his own people. As we study through these chapters, we'll see a mounting conflict between Jesus and the Jewish leaders. But the discourses that Jesus gives and that John wrote down are just full of rich details of Jesus telling us who he is. And to me, it's just amazing that people in his day their eyes had to have been blinded or they would never or how could they not see it unless their eyes were blinded? Because it seems so obvious to me. So John chapter 5 opens with a miracle of the healing of a disabled man by the pool. We don't know what's wrong with him. I'm assuming he might have been paralyzed, but we don't know. And then this miracle is followed by a lengthy discourse on Jesus' authority, So we're going to start in John chapter 5, verses 1 through 16, and we're just going to kind of slowly go through verse by verse. Bob, could you read verse 1?
Sure. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem.
So John gave us another time marker, even if it was a fuzzy time marker. He used the words after this, and basically he was saying sometime later. And according to commentaries, it could have been weeks or months. We don't know. It was after, but it's the next thing that he wanted to record. after the healing of the official son. And so and Jesus, it says here, after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up. Jesus went to Jerusalem for a feast. Most believe the feast was not Passover. It might have been Pentecost. It might have been the Feast of Tabernacles. We just don't know. It just says, John just says it was a feast. So as he comes into Jerusalem, he goes to the pool of Bethesda. Nancy, could you read John 5, verses 2 and 3?
Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of individuals, blind, lame, and paralyzed.
Okay, so Jerusalem was an interesting place. There were many gates. You read, we just read through in our daily, we're reading through, Martha and I read through the Bible every year, and we did not long ago finish Nehemiah. We're now in Job. That's different. But when we were in Nehemiah is rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, and there were a lot of gates, and he names them all.
12.
I think 12 gates.
12 gates.
Yeah. So there's a sheep gate. So near the sheep gate was a good-sized pool that was designed, what it was originally built for was to wash the sheep that were being brought in for sacrifice. The pool was called Bethesda. The ESV translated as Bethesda. I think the King James translates it as Bethsaida, depending on how it's translated.
Same place.
Same place. And this pool would have been avoided by the Jewish leaders because they would have considered it an unclean place.
Sure.
So, of course, Jesus went to places that the Jewish leaders would never go because Jesus was reaching people who were in need. And he wasn't afraid to go into bars and places where people, the Jewish leaders thought were just unclean. Can't stay away from it. It's really funny. Here's a funny story, just a side note. The pastor in Seal Beach, California, that married Martha and I, what's his name?
Roy Roberts.
Roy Roberts. He was a former football player, fullback, All-American, big guy.
He was a friend of my brother, Glenn.
Was he?
Yes.
Oh, what a wonderful man. Godly man, and he's the one that married us. And you met him, obviously, because you were at the wedding. But one time he was coming to church for Wednesday night or something like
Sunday night.
Sunday night, and he was late and he didn't show up. And all of a sudden, the church got a phone call, and he said he'd been in an accident down the road, and he was right in front of this place called Mother's Bar. His only place, no cell phones back then, so he went in there to get a phone so he could call the church and let him know he's going to be late to get all the things, and nobody was hurt or anything.
He got rear-ended.
So he goes in there, and he's calling for the church from Mother's Bar.
Well, the funny thing about it was that the head deacon went out and said, "We just got a call from the pastor from Mother's Bar. He's going to be a little late."
So somebody in the bar asked him,
Bartender.
the bartender asked him, "Well, what do you do?" And he says, "Well, I'm a minister for the gospel of Jesus Christ." What the guy say?
Be damned.
I'll be damned. He said, "You don't have to be." But Jesus went into those kind of places. That's what he did. He was always consorting with the people that the leaders would have nothing to do with.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the people he was after, the sick, the people that were sinners, like us, like me. So there was a tradition at the time that said periodically an angel would come and stir the waters of the pool. If an ill person would get in the water while it was being stirred, they would be healed. John didn't address this. There's a phrase in the text, the original text, that are the oldest texts don't include it. Many of the later texts do include it. That's verse 4, which the ESV doesn't include because it doesn't come from the most reliable texts. And all it is telling us about this whole thing about the pool being stirred and people getting in. So we're not including that in our study because, well, I was chapter verse 4, but ESV didn't include it. But the man that Jesus talks to describes it anyway. So that's coming up in the next passage. So, Kathy, could you read verses 5 through 9a?
First part.
Okay, 5 through 9. Okay. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going another steps down before me." Anyway, Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed and walk." And at once the man was healed, and he took up his bed and walked.
So many invalids congregated around the pool in hope of being healed. We don't know the number of people around it, but John used the word multitude in verse 3. So there was a good number of people there. So why did Jesus single out this one man to heal out of a multitude of people that were there at the pool? This is really
There could be many reasons, but knowing that he had suffered that long and he had been waiting that long, but didn't feel like it was possible because people would beat him
yeah.
to the water.
The fact that Jesus picked this man to heal, I believe it shows his deity. It shows that he's God because he knew what was in the heart of the man. He knew what was going to happen afterwards. He knew everything about it. This was a God-planned event.
So it was an appointment,
It was a divine appointment.
Divine appointment, that's right.
just like the woman at the well.
God is sovereign. If God chooses to heal one and not many others, who are we to argue with him? That's what Apostle Paul says. It's a hard concept for people to grasp. People think that a God of love would heal all people.
But he doesn't.
But he doesn't. I've experienced it in my life. He doesn't. The problem is that people try to make God fit into their own very limited understanding. They try to put God in a box.
Well, and God,
He's not a
He's not.
celestial vending machine.
or Santa Claus, or give me what I want, all the time. It's what we need and what he deems is his will. And that's
Yes.
hard.
I have seen God's sovereignty displayed in healing people. Within 1 year, I saw God heal 2 people with very serious cases of cancer. I mean, they were healed. And yet, in the same year, there was another person that we prayed for that God did not heal and took her home.
And she was 27.
Yes. Why? We don't know. We don't know the will of God, the mind of God. We don't know why God chose to heal some and not all, but I will never argue with God about it because he's sovereign. Chuck,
I think part of the reason is because, he heals some because he has more work for them to do here on earth.
that's right. And he's the potter and we're the clay.
Well, and God's miracles almost always have another purpose than just being healed. There's almost always a purpose for them. And sometimes we can see that purpose and sometimes we can't, but,
Okay. Let's go on with this. I tell you what, this is one of those important stories that we could get a lot out of. The man had been an invalid for 38 years. That was an extremely long time in Jesus' day. the average lifetime span then was way shorter than it is now. It was for men, it was like in the 40s. It's interesting, reading through Kings and Chronicles and following how long these people lived, many of them died late 30s, early 40s. For this man to have lived as an invalid for 38 years, that's a long time. Now, it doesn't say that he was born that way. After we hear what Jesus tells him, you have to assume that happened to him sometime later in life when he was probably when he was a young man, and that's a long time to be an invalid, 38 years. So what did Jesus ask invalid? This is an important question. Do you want to be healed? That's an important question. There's a great song, Gaither song. Do you want to be well? Do you want to be well? And there's a lot of people that simply don't. They want to continue on in their misery or whatever. No. Jesus asked him, do you want to be healed? There are some Bible teachers that say that a person cannot be healed by God unless that person believes that he or she can be healed. So it's a faith, healing only comes through faith. I don't necessarily agree with that. God is sovereign. I know we're taught to pray in faith, and that's true. Faith is important. That's not arguable. The Bible's pretty clear on it. Well, the healing of the official son that we studied last week, it was all about his faith. He had the faith to believe that Jesus could heal his son. And when Jesus said, go home, he's healed, he turned around and left. He had the faith to believe it. That's why his son was healed, I believe. However, sometimes God heals people who do not have the faith to be healed, and maybe don't even want to be healed. I believe this invalid is a prime example. Sometimes in his sovereignty, God does things to people that they do not expect or do they want. I believe this man was content in his disability. He'd been there a long time. He probably had a lot of people that were helping him and kind of taking care of him. But once he was healed, he'd have to get busy to care for himself. And when Jesus asked him the question, did he answer the question?
No.
No, he temporized about, well, the stirring of the water, and I just can't get down there. No, he never answered Jesus' question. And that tells me that he really didn't want to be healed.
I think he was just in the status quo, and that was the way life was. And
I don't think he wanted to openly admit it. But then Jesus responded by giving a strong command, get up, take up your bed, and walk. And the Greek words used for get up make it a very strong command. They're very strong words of command, giving the connotation that Jesus spoke them with power. Get yourself up off the ground and take up your bed and walk. When Jesus could speak and power came out.
that's right.
When we get to John chapter 19 or 18, when the crowd comes to him with Judas and so forth, he asked him, who are you looking for? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. He says, I am he. And what they do, they all fell down.
Wow.
He spoke and his power hit him right in the chest, knocked him down. Jesus could speak with power. And I believe at this point, he spoke to this man with power. And immediately it says the man was healed. And he got up, picked up his bed, and walked. He did what Jesus told him to do. So let's see what happened. Barbara, it's your turn. Could you read chapter John 5, 9b to 16?
Sure. Now that day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who had been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it is not lawful for you to take up your bed." But he answered them, "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.'" They asked him, "Who is the man who said it to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, as there was a crowd in the place. Afterward, Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well. Sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this was why the Jews were persecuting Jesus, because he was doing these things on the Sabbath.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. So almost immediately, I get the impression almost immediately, this man was challenged by the Jewish leaders about carrying his mat on the Sabbath. The first, so did carrying his mat break the Mosaic law? Well, we have to read what does the law say about the Sabbath?
It's don't work.
So here we go. It's where it says it and most definitively is Exodus 20, verses 9 to 11. I'll read it. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you, your son, your daughter, your male servant, your female servant, your livestock, your sojourner who is within your gate. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the Sabbath day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. You shall not do any work. Well, what kind of work was he talking about? It was ordinary work, like selling fish in the marketplace, or
Plowing in the field.
plowing in the fields, or harvesting your grain, or if you're a carpenter like Jesus was, making a chair. That would be breaking the Sabbath. It was your ordinary work, the things that you normally did. They still had to eat, so somebody in the household had to cook a meal. So there were still things that needed to be done, and that wasn't breaking the Sabbath. The problem was that in Jesus' time, the Jewish leaders had added many traditions they thought better define the law. And then they forced the people to follow their traditions as if they were the law.
Mhm.
And if you violated those things, you were breaking the law, their traditions. So by
They were.
carrying his mat, the healed invalid broke one of their traditions that they considered to be equal with the law.
So they put the traditions ahead of the blessings of God.
Yes.
They did that a lot.
But
Wow.
carrying a light straw mat on the guy's shoulder was not the healed man's regular work. He wasn't doing that to earn money. He was just going home. But they had so narrowed down this law so that you practically couldn't, if you moved your finger, oh, you work.
Well, it's
doing
control. It's control over the people, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's a way of just completely establishing control over what everyone did.
Jesus never once violated the law.
No.
That is why I know that this man carrying his mat didn't break the law, because Jesus perfectly fulfilled the law. Therefore, from what this man did, only violated a tradition that Jesus knew wasn't part of the law at all. And when the man was challenged by the Jewish leaders, what did he do? He threw Jesus under the bus.
He did.
That's one of our modern statements, but that's what he did. what a difference between this man and the blind man that Jesus healed in John chapter 9 that we're going to get to. What a wonderful story. I love that story. The blind man defended Jesus to the point of being thrown out of the synagogue. This invalid simply deflected the blame for carrying his mat back to Jesus. Well, the man told me to do that. They said, well, who was it? He said, I don't know.
But when he found out, he ran back and told him.
That's right.
It was him.
Yeah, later on, when Jesus found the invalid, and what did Jesus say to him? He warned him to stop sinning or something worse is going to happen to you. That's a pretty strong statement.
Because most, I wouldn't say most, much of the disease and illnesses and stuff that we see are not as a result of sin. Some are, drug addiction maybe and stuff like that. But, you know, like Kristen did not sin, and that's not why she has Crohn's disease. But this guy, maybe something else is going on here.
No, it's very clear. Jesus said, stop sinning or something worse is going to happen to you. That's what he said. That's a clear example of a person who was an invalid as a result of sin. Who knows what he did, but his illness was a result of sin. And again, like as Martha said, not all illnesses happen because a person sinned. My dad had muscular dystrophy. I don't believe that he had muscular dystrophy because he was a sinner.
It was genetic.
It's a genetic thing, and he had muscular dystrophy before he was ever saved. And when he got saved, many people told him, well, you just don't have enough faith. That's why God's not healed you of that. Well, that's not true at all. And he finally told me toward the end of his life that God's grace is sufficient for me. And he said, if God would have healed me, he said, Gary, if God would have healed me, I would have been too proud to be used by him. And he knew himself. It took him a long time to come to that conclusion. A long time. It's very hurtful for people to tell these people that have these really bad illnesses, oh, you don't have enough faith or God would have healed you. That's wrong.
It can be.
It's very hurtful.
Very hurtful.
And a lot of people have hurt Kristen over the years by telling her that. She's got this really bad Crohn's disease.
Or what sin in your life?
Yeah.
Do you need to confess?
Yeah. Well, we're studying through listening to Job in our Bible reading, and God clearly, Job didn't do anything wrong to get sick. Anyway, I got to get past that. But this man clearly had a sin issue, and the difference between this man and the blind man in John 9 is so stark. And when we get to John 9, we'll talk about this some more. It's so stark where Jesus said the blind man was blind not because of his sins or his parents' sins, no sins at all. It's because God was going to get glory through him. I think of my niece's husband who died of an airplane accident in the Air Force, and it was sad. Why did God take this young man? He was a believer and a strong witness for the Lord. More than 10 young men at his funeral were saved. God may have taken him home. God may have taken him home because of these young men that were going to get saved. So they would be saved. We don't know God's purposes. But here's a man who really didn't want to be saved, and God healed, but he got healed. And and the Jewish leaders immediately went after Jesus, and we're going to study that next week. This led to persecution of the Jews by the Jewish leaders. I hate to think of what happened to this invalid after this, because Jesus clearly warned him to stop sinning or something worse could happen to you.
He may have taken heed, so.
We don't know, but he certainly didn't do well right there. Questions or comments? I'm sorry, I got a little bit preachy today, but I've been really pondering this passage all week, and it really has just felt strongly to me.
Well, I always think it's interesting how the Pharisees were always ready to point a finger or ready to accuse, yet they didn't want to be held accountable for their actions.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to see a lot more of that.
So concerned about breaking Sabbath, but not concerned at all about the fact that this person suffering so greatly was healed. They didn't care a thing about that.
They didn't care a
Right.
thing that he had been suffering for 38 years.
Or the woman, or the withered hand, add to the list of all the ones that he did on Sabbath. They
And
didn't
sometimes I think Jesus did that just to rile them up.
think so too. Like, watch this, guys.
Well, I believe that that's precisely what happened. This was a divine appointment. I believe that Jesus did this quite on purpose. He picked this man because he knew that he knew in the end that the word would get back to the Jewish leaders that it was him that did it. He knew that there was going to be kind of an uproar about it. And it was going to give him an opportunity to give the Jewish leaders a chance to turn from their wickedness. And so we're going to see, as we study the discourse that follows this, we're going to learn a lot about Jesus talking to the Jewish leaders and making a strong effort to teach them the truth. And they
Yeah, I'm just still trying to connect the dots about, him going and telling the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus. I don't know if I see that as a rejection of Jesus. It seemed to me he was just answering their question. It wasn't like Judas did it for greed and pride and, all these other things.
No, we don't know. There's some things I'm kind of reading into this, but the fact that Jesus told him to stop sinning or something
Yeah.
worse is going to happen to you, and the fact that when Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be well?" He just like, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
And it had been so long, 38 years. That's a long time.
But
Yeah, but you also
he would have recognized the religious leaders. I mean, they would have been people of power during the day, at least over the
He
shoes.
would have recognized them.
So, I mean, if they had come and asked him a question, well, who did it? And then he would know. But then he found out. I'm not sure I see that as necessarily a sin. I see it as part of God's divine plan, sovereign plan, obviously. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm not sure that he sinned by telling the Jewish leaders it was Jesus. I wouldn't say that he sinned by doing that.
Oh, I see.
We also don't know his motivation, so.
We don't know what his
We don't know at the
motivation
heart.
is, but we can assume just by how he responded that he didn't have a lot of, he wasn't really grateful to Jesus.
Yeah. Okay.
Certainly not like the blind man.
No.
When
Sure.
the Jewish leaders confronted the blind man, when we get to it, he defended Jesus to the hilt
Yeah.
because he knew he was blind and now he could see.
Right. Amen.
And this guy knew that he'd been an invalid for 38 years and now he could walk and do things for himself and things. And you would think it'd be like the man at the temple gate when Peter and John went by him and he asked for alms and they said, "Silver and gold we have none, but such as we have we give to thee in the name of Jesus Christ. Rise up and walk." And then he went walking and leaping and praising God because he was healed. Why wasn't this lame man walking and leaping and praising God? Because he was healed.
Interesting. I was I see this guy is a pastor in South Carolina, but he has a little TikTok that he does, just encouragement and stuff like that. And he said they were praying for this guy one time that came to their church, and he had some sort of disability, and they were praying for him to be healed. And the guy goes, don't pray for that. He goes, why? He says, I'll lose my Medicaid.
Oh,
You know, he would rather have the money than to be healed. So I kind of see that maybe similar situation.
Some people like to be miserable.
You're right. Yeah.
You like the attention they get.
That's right. They like the attention they get.
Gary's mother loved to go to the doctor. She did. She told me one time, I just love to go to the doctor.
She liked to be waited on too.
She did.
And it was kind of her downfall.
Yes.